Welcome to this episode of Meet the Artist at Framethrower. My name is Ben Kusold, and in this episode, I'll be speaking with Robyn Luckham, animation director and global head of animation at DNeg. Robyn's worked in the industry for quite a few years on some incredible projects, including Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, Avatar, Star Wars Episode 3, King Kong, Dune, and many, many more. I'll be honest, I was in a little bit of a lull creatively, and this conversation with Robyn really kicked me back into gear a bit. Robyn is so inspiring. He has such a joyful approach to the craft, to the industry, and to leadership as well. It was just delightful speaking with him. And as always, if you're an animator looking for community and feedback, come check out Framethrower at framethrower.io. Great vibes, great artists, and customized feedback tools, all available for free at framethrower.io. And now here's Robyn Luckham.
Animation is kind of crazy. You feel like you've always hit a bar, and
Yeah.
then you just unlock a door and it goes. I'm like, oh, okay. And you get to that point, I go, this is great. I don't know if I'm a bit bored. Oh my god, there's another world. And then, let alone getting into seniors and leads and stuff. It's just, it's a ridiculous career.
Thank you so much for doing this. I know you're busy, and the house and family as well. So it's a lot to take out an evening.
Yeah.
But I was first also I was gonna start by congratulating you on your work on Dune and the team's work.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It's been crazy.
Oh, I bet. I know it's been a while since you guys wrapped up, but I saw it. I think it's like 2 weeks ago now, but it looks amazing.
I'm pretty staggered. I mean, I'm pretty staggered. I watched it. It's not what you expect. I think I've been drilled into watching so many kind of science fiction, kind of Marvel-y, a tight story, and it has a similar arcs.
Yeah.
So when you watch this one of Denis, it's not that. It's and it's like I did an interview the other day for Animation Network, and I was saying it's not a science fiction fantasy. It's like a science fiction reality. When we're doing the animation, it's like you can't stray into fantasy. It has to be absolutely as real as possible.
Yeah.
But just comp work, and then the sound design that put it all together. Like I was sitting with Lizzie, my wife, and I was like, how many shots do you think were in that? She goes, quite a few. She goes, I don't know, 50, 100. And I was like, there's over 2,000.
Yeah.
Massive. That was bigger than Return of the King, which had 1,500. So there's so many in there. But I was, it's like a bit of a work of art. Sounds a bit too kind of a bit braggy there, but it's lush.
I'd agree. I think like you said, what it's like the amount of shots is not apparent to the eye because it's so subtle and it's so solid as well. I know. I read an interview just today, VFX magazine, I think it was, where you talked about how Denis Villeneuve, the director, wanted this really, really grounded feel of realism and tangible. So it's like you can't just resort to lasers lifting you up magically. It all has to kind of feel. And I really loved what you guys did with. I know it's not a small thing, but it can sound like a small thing. Just the wings on those kind of like dragonfly.
Well, look, it's funny. It's like it's right in my wheelhouse. I love the technical stuff. I love getting really real physical stuff, all back in the day at Wedder and stuff. But that you have to kind of give it respect. And the thing is about vehicles and stuff like that, you can just kind of glass it over because it's not a creature or it's not facial. But you got to give it respect, and especially had to do it with Denis. So we pulled it apart. I mean, all credit to the team; they really nailed it. But they pulled it apart and worked out, okay, this thing is huge. And we looked at helicopters and got reference of helicopters. And the Black Hawk, the biggest helicopter we could get, you could fit it inside the ornithopter. So we didn't have any that scale flying other than like Boeings and planes like that. So And how do we do that moving around? How do we kind of get that working correctly? And we looked at loads of tests, and I started with, so I love doing tests. Tests are so important to find character in anything. And I wanted to give it full respect and do every single test of flight. It was like I was in the Wright brothers. You know, I was flying a plane for the first time. How the fuck do I get this off the ground? You know? So we're like, okay, well, let's go to the place I love first, something like Studio Ghibli. Let's go to Laputa and their kind of copters. Can we pulse these up? And you see these pulsing, and I honestly, it was like, you see those fast black and white movies of these planes going
yeah.
It looked like that, and I'm like, well, this isn't the movie for that. You know, it looked good, but it was too fun. So we started ramping up, and everything was done. You know, every blade is a figure eight, because we wanted to have that kind of figure eight wing motion. Every blade has, you know, bunched up keys at the top and bottom, so it comes up and down, you know, as you would expect in animation, higher top, faster down, slower coming up. So every blade has that, and then we just increased it. So each blade, you know, I don't know how many times it went in the end. It was a rendering nightmare. We had to run 10 subframes per frame. And then we were doing like 40 beats, 30 beats a second. I don't know. I actually can't remember. But it's probably just out of my brain through fear and nerves. But yeah, it was so fast. And then when you get into the rhythm of how it works, you're like, okay, well, if I'm banking this way, I need to lessen the beats on one side and increase the beats on the other. Not just tilt. I want to see this go and flare up so it can push and motivate it around. So we looked at how we can increase not only the width, but the diameter. And also inside the blur, we were looking at rhythm patterns of when you'd catch a blade or something. So you could see those increase and decrease. So as they're moving. So all these tiny details started to key in together. Wow. I was talking to one of the animators, Alex Melville, about this. I'm like, you know, when you're thinking about these things, they're so heavy. There was like a 3-stage thing. It's you move the wings, then the body rotates, then you move the body. Because the wings are the power, and then the body is so heavy, it will rotate into it, and then it moves. So we get the 3-stage process, really, and Alex really nailed it with some of his shots. So that he just clicked in his head, and I was like, yeah, got this. Nice. And yeah, we had a great moment because he started to change Denis's mind. Denis knows what he wants, and this is what he wants, and you give it to him. And I always like to show alts of animators. And he goes, I like this one better. And I was like super chuffed. I'm like, Alex, you changed Denis's mind. I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm like,
well,
I would have thought they were a big one, and so when we got them super fast, they just looked real. They wanted to shorten the wings. I said, no, in fact, can we lengthen the blades so they feel they can just keep this weight up? And then when you watch it, and you know, honestly, I watch it and I'm like, people are like, they don't even ask me. They're like, oh, that obviously makes sense.
Yeah,
awesome. That's because we thought about it, the animators studied it, and it made sense. It looked like it could lift. There was no questions of looking silly, which you could easily have done. It just like ferocious, and it made sense.
Yeah, because I thought about it afterwards. It's like normally in this, when you watch in a lot of cases when you watch these films, it's like the whole while you're thinking to yourself, why not just helicopters? Like, why not? But then in this case, they had this really heavy pulse feeling at the kind of like the joint, and it felt like there was like an engine pulsing, and it's sort of it makes sense. And like you said, it made sense that they would work that way, and it's
exactly
and that's quite an accomplishment, because it's like you said, it's I bet that you guys worked so much with, like you said, working with the blur. You work with the effects, and you work with so much more than just what's on your play blast, because you
have to, and I think for something like that, again, like those mechanical objects, they either look silly or they work and you just don't think about them. It's like doing a car. It's like, well, that's just a car, I didn't think about it. So almost like the best compliment is, no compliment. It's like, well, makes sense, doesn't it? But it took that analysis to give it, and Denis wouldn't let otherwise, neither would Paul Lambert. The big thing coming off of Blade Runner, I was told, he said he's going to be scrutinizing the weight and scrutinizing the vehicle so they actually feel it.
Yeah.
But they did such a good job, Justin and the guys, and doing the ornithopters. We did this Bible of motion of how it would fly on the spot, forward, backwards, how the wings would turn.
Nice.
And Denis loved it. I think we got the famous, I deeply love it. And he had this on it, and I think he was showing it around just to show he really loved it. And we were like super proud.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made sense. Once we got our research and then our heads clicked in, then, you know, like any good creature or anything you study, that the vehicle decides what the shot should be as much. Well, where do you want to go? There, over there. So, well, it can do this, but it can't do that.
Yeah.
That's not enough time, and it can go there. And that was great. It was great to get in that place. So you could easily see if it was right or wrong then.
Yeah, I bet. And you're talking about all the research and all this. It's like that. I can only imagine how many times more that must have got into getting the worm right, because that was like you really had that whole, like, it was like it's like a natural disaster combined with a Godzilla that comes out of nothing, and you really had you nailed it all with the scale and with the because like it seems like a similar thing that with the what were they called, the not the helicopters but the dragonfly,
the ornithopters. Oh, the ornithopter, yeah.
Ornithopter. So you, in the same way, you could have the worm could have looked very silly if it had been too animated, which is, I know it's a temptation, but it had that whole majestic, but also and then you also had to move with the sand around it. Which
that word majestic is pretty critical. And like we didn't start that way either. I mean, again, I have to explore every avenue and try. So I go super biologist and research every single type of worm and snake and mammal and strip it down and work out how it could push and pull. And I'm going into, I found these ancient archaeological kind of drawings of a worm creature in China that had this mouth grabbing and how it would move in sand, and it used to use like spikes and push the spikes around and move it through. And so I was obsessed with trying to make it biologically accurate. Like anything, you know, I'm just like, well, obsessed, but also just trying to make it accurate. So I'm like, how do I move through here? And like an earthworm has a kind of like a concertina, it gathers up and pushes out. So we did all these tests and we showed them, and I've still got them, and it worked. It had weight, but it just wasn't a sandworm. It was a creature that lived in the desert, and it became too biological, too organic, I think. And Denis, you know, he's not an animator like you or I, but he has obviously an amazing way to tell stories. So, you know, it's difficult to articulate. So he would say words like majestic and say words like this, and Paul would do the same. And you know, you as a good animator, you can take people's language and convert it into animation. So I'm like, okay, I think we've gone too far. And I was terrified of making it a tube in the sand. You know, I was terrified of making it a giant cylinder moving through. So I had to give it respect. So we did pull it apart, but then we took a macro view of like, well, what is this creature? It's lived here forever. And Denis saying it's prehistoric, you know. So it's like, well, this is kind of the way it moves through. It has to have this majestic way, and it was lucky for me. It went back to my Heartless Sea days, and it was the whales, and it became a sand whale rather than a sandworm. And then suddenly it all clicked, and the deserts were oceans, and we looked at it like that, and I was like, yes, this is it. And we started doing the same thing, and I could pull all these old sperm whale kind of references back of cresting and coming up and breaching surfaces. And we were determined to get a worm breach in there as well at some point. I think I tried to sell it to Denis about 40 times, but he was very, you know, much more subtle. I think I squeezed it in one shot in the background. But and then it made sense, and it started to have this elegance and fear, but complete domination of where it was. And it kind of, it was in the same line as the sand, because the sand started to react that way. And sand's obviously sand, you know, it's a simulation. So like we had on whales, if you go wrong, it's obvious because it's covered in sand. The sand started, it started to all look, definitely was desert, but obviously had this kind of watery feeling. And I was like, well, the scale of the sandworm, you know, the scale of a of a sand grain, maybe it would affect that. And it started to simulate a little bit like that too.
Yeah.
So it all started knitting together with this kind of elegant thing. But the actual worm itself is the designs were amazing from Patrice, but the actual worm itself was really challenging to put together because we had scales on the back which were hard, but a mouth which had to concertina close and open. But the scales needed to be everywhere, but the scales couldn't stretch.
Kind
of figure that out, and that was another kind of challenge. And how does a circle contract and scale? How does that actually happen? Where, far from the obvious, do you do that? And so we had to try and look at muscles, and Eric Bates was sitting there with me, and I'm like, I want to pull this apart and build it from scratch. Like, does it have a skeleton? What's the skeleton going to be? I had all this kind of system inside the mouth as well, which is another thing. I want the inside to be grotesque, the outside to be hard, and the inside, this camera footage of a beatboxer, and the camera went inside his larynx. His larynx, like all the muscles pulling and affecting his language. So the inside of the worm's mouth was based in the back using this beatboxer, so it could all move and articulate with muscles and be pulled. So when you went in the mouth, you're like, what the hell? And each chamber was different. And the outside is all, again, we've peeled it back with kind of muscles. So the actual works, like the inside muscles can pull the lip in, the outside muscles can contract, and it all pulls down as like an orbital muscle, which you get around your mouth. That does the same thing. So it can all pull in, and at the end of the day, we could get this sound singing opera. There's so many controls for making it work, but it all made logical sense, and it all kind of it flexed in the right places. And then you have obviously all the teeth, which are like, again, was like a whale, like it was like the baleen, which kind of sift out. So it all kind of came together really from discovering what it could and couldn't be, but also looking at what this performance was supposed to be. It's supposed to be majestic, and it all like knitted together really well.
That's amazing. I did have that feeling of the whale with the teeth, kind of like there's like a sieve where things would go through, and it was beautiful.
I mean, Patrice worked it out. They worked out, like, again, this is back to science fiction reality. It didn't have these 16 layers of teeth chomp things. Because what is it going to chomp? In a giant sand, it's going to chomp what? Rocks? He's not a rock eater. It's on small creatures, and like a whale, so it just takes all the liquid and sifts out what it needs, and uses that. I have no idea what it eats, but we know it poops spice melange. That's about it. It's based on reality, and everything came from that. Like the entire story, the entire philosophy of it came from Denis and Patrice's start to make this from reality. And then it's just right. It was just perfect for me doing it. I loved it.
No, that's amazing. And I think from having read the first book, I think you were right in that you needed like a more of a linear approach for the sandworm to get that, like, it's coming for you feeling. If it had kind of been weaving like a snake through the
and we tried that. I thought about the muscles, of a snake, how it can push and pull. It was, I don't think it's a kilometer long or a kilometer and a half long, and it's like, most people don't really want to watch a 40-minute documentary. I would. It's like, we've had it many times. I've had it throughout, Lord of the Rings days, Mama Kills and King Kong. Getting big creatures. Only now you can do actually big creatures justice, like Kong and Skull Island, where you can actually move them at the speed they're supposed to move. Otherwise it's just too fast. But Denis didn't want that. He wanted it slow, and he did give it time and space. But to get it across the screen would take too long. But we didn't break it. We rarely pushed it because simulations were so high with the sand. I couldn't do a test of a giant speedy worm and then ruin a 3-day render computation X because I'm like, oops, I want it to fly. So you had to be very smart, but it all just worked out. And I think that's probably from doing Heart of the Sea as well, actually. Knowing how how to respect that speed.
Yeah, I remember because I was on Heart of the Sea as well. It was a great show, and yeah,
Fun.
it's like it's all about figuring out and nailing that character of the whale, and then you get it and it feels right, and then you go from there.
Yeah,
And
and it's a learning process to just get your head into the zone. And I think, man, same with the ornithopters as well. It was like, okay, everyone just animates it like, I'm going to just go, and I'm like, that's cool, but you got to think of this logic, and you kind of break down the dramatic you want to do into the reality of how this would happen in the cockpit. Okay, this is going to go down. That means the wings are going to go down. I've got to spree these up. This rotates, then it stinks. So you've got to do that, but you go in straight away just trying to fly it around pretty crazy like, and you just have to go backwards from there. Same with the worm, really.
So
learn it, you unlearn it, and then learn it.
Yeah, and then you start again on the next show. I'm tempted because you've always been in VFX, right? So, like your whole professional career. So you did 4 years at Framestore London, right out of school, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then was that always your interest, big creatures and no?
No, it was not actually. Like I got into it. It was. I mean, a lot of what I've done is quite lucky. Yeah, going through university. Starting before university, I was a painter. I only wanted to do fine art, but I was pretty good at maths as well, and I studied maths and art and history. It's completely separate things. So going into uni, you have these kind of forms, and you're supposed to pick your 8 or 12 universities, and I picked one because I hadn't got a clue. I was either going to go to do Bournemouth to do animation, or I was going to go to fine art. So I didn't think about fine art because I wanted to do the math side of it, and I started to get into computer games and using Deluxe Paint, and I was painting, like copying Tintin, the start of Tintin, the run cycle. And I used to copy it as little kind of paintbrush stills. And if you painted it in Deluxe Paint on my Amiga, it animated. So I was like animating these like pixels of a Tintin guy running, playing football. And I was like, this is pretty cool. So I went to one university and I got in, and I was very lucky to do that. But it had a big maths section to it as well, and which I loved. And we studied on a system called Seagull, which was it's before Maya. And they couldn't afford soft image. So you had to program everything you did. Ooh. So if you wanted to keyframe, you had to write a script to do a keyframe. If you wanted to make an object bend, you had to write a script to draw the vertices to bend an object.
Wow.
You had to, if you wanted IK, you had to write a script to write an IK. So I had to do all that. My last thing was like 40,000 pages of code to write my animation. So I came from that, a bit kind of wild, and I did really well. I mean, I got a first. So I don't know how that happened, and I was definitely labelled by old tutors and friends as, this is how not to do it, because I wasn't winging it, but I think I was intuitively enjoying it so much that I could just do it in massive bursts, and I would do it in big bursts, and it'd all be in my head, and I would tell everyone the story in my head, and I'd just go for like 2 days solid. So after that, I finished university, and I was like, okay, well, this is an area I never thought I would ever be good at, because I was only going to do art. If I was going to take a year out, I was like, I can't. I need to try and get some work. Otherwise, I'm going to forget all this and be terrible. And so I applied like crazy as soon as I finished. Well, I did my master's, in fact, because no one knew Seagull. So I did another year, did my master's, and then they were teaching soft image, but Maya 1 came up, and I wanted to know Maya. I heard it was great and it looked really cool. So instead of doing the course, I did Maya and taught myself with a couple of friends. And I modeled as well. I modeled a skull creature in the package called Rhino. And it was so hard. I'd pull a vertice, you'd wait a few seconds, and then it would pop.
Oh.
And then this skull beast coming out of the ground, and I animated in Maya, but it was like, you know, no one was teaching us, so everything was breaking, the renders weren't working, and we were literally, I remember being stuck for 2 weeks because we missed a checkbox, because no one had there to teach us about it. But that was it. And then it's like, okay, this suddenly became shit. This is cool now. I can actually animate something now. This is great. And from there, I got a real, and yeah, I was petrified of not being able to remember what I was doing. So I sent them out to everywhere I could. Sony Games at the time. This little place called Pepper's Ghost in London, a TV show. And I sent them everywhere. In fact, I sent them even, it's all VHS tapes. I sent them over to the US. Because I wanted to have feedback on my skills. So I sent one to ILM. This is a big thing. Like, at university, my 3rd year of my degree, I had no idea who ILM were.
Yeah.
Who's that? And everyone's like, oh man, you are just terrible at animation. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know these things. But yeah, I trained myself weirdly, and this is throughout my career, which is very frustrating to a lot of people. Because of my history background, I was really scared of influence and being biased. And because of my love of art, I was like, I want to try and work this out from my perspective. If I start reading about it, I'm just going to be doing someone else's animation. So I'm going to try and work it out. So I had very little knowledge of the great animators and the great books and the great Disney guys. And I wasn't really taught at university because it's more of a technical, you become a TD with kind of programming. I didn't want to learn. So even like great animation festivals like Annecy, I just didn't know what it was. I just didn't know. Everyone was like, what the hell are you, an animator? I'm like, yeah. But I just didn't know. But I kind of didn't want to. I wanted to learn. I did it for my art, how to animate for my own brain.
Yeah.
But yes, anyway, so going to Pepper's Ghost and stuff like that, I've sent another one to Framestore as well. But no, I didn't. That's right. No, I had my letter to Pepper's Ghost. That's right. And I was going to post it. I was literally walking. I got a call from a friend of mine, Paul Campion, who said, don't post it. Framestore had just finished Walking with Dinosaurs and they're looking for people. I'm like, okay. So I didn't post it. And then I went to see Mike Milne, who was amazing, and showed him my reel. And he was like, and another good friend, Max Tyre, was there. And they were like, that's pretty good. And I'm like, oh, thanks. You know, you're obviously incredibly nervous. I still am, as to whether you're good enough. And Mike's like, what do you want to do? Because I had some good lighting in my art background. And I'm like, well, I want to be an animator. It's like, well, it looks like you want to be a director. I'm like, no, I just want to animate. I just don't know how to do it. And he's like, okay. And then they offered me a job. And that was it. So I stopped my Pepper's Ghost, which could have been a different career altogether. Yeah. And started at Framestore, which was like this amazing decision because I had 4 years of animating every creature known to mankind, but really fast. Yeah. So I had, you know, 4-legged, heavy. I had small. I had bipedal. I had some great teachers. An animator called Virgil Manning, he was a harsh crowd, but he would be directed. He'd say that looks shit. I'm like, okay, and then I'll do something, you know, and he's like, yeah, that's really good. I'm like, shit, did you hear? I'm gonna write this down. But I actually started modeling. Like I did as they call a hero job back in the day. I modeled, rigged, and animated a creature. Wow. First job I modeled is Intelligent. You can probably see it somewhere on YouTube.
I'll try and
and I modeled Intelligent, and I rigged it, and I did everything other than the painting. And I was like, oh, I did a hero job. And then from there, I started getting more creatures, and because I was quite fast, and I loved it. But I was just animating creature after creature after creature, faster and faster and faster.
Which shows were they? Do you remember those first?
So we went from Walking with Beasts to Dinotopia to Walking with all these Walking with Beasts spin-offs. The Ballad of Big Owl, the Giant Claw. There's about 4 or 5 of them. Oh, okay, cool. In that time, then I started to do a little bit of film, but we were on the TV floor. So we had, I think, Harry Potter 1 or 2. There's a previews, a little bit of previews on that. But really, I was just animating away and just loving it and can't believe what's going on. But in that time period, I started to love. Someone told me, that's it. Dave Hewlin, who's a friend who was over in Framestore for a long time. I think he's still there, head of studio in New York. He said, "Oh, Robyn, you should read Lord of the Rings." I know that was it. It's a conversation. Lord of the Rings. Like, oh, I've never read that. And they're like, "Oh, you country bumpkin or something or other. Read it. And I'm like, really? So yeah, you love it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So like Samwise. I'm like, okay. And I read it and I fell in love with it. I was like, this is amazing. And because the trailer came out for Lord of the Rings, when I was reading the books, I had all the actors' faces in my head. So when I was reading the books and watching the films, I was like, this is exactly what, because the trailer, and I loved it. And so I got so into Lord of the Rings whilst I was at Framestore. I made a big song and dance, which I usually do, and I got onto Leicester Square, like on Fellowship, and I bought 60 seats in the row and sold them all to people at Framestore, and I turned up in my tuxedo and walked into the rooms, and we had it there. Let's go. It was amazing, brilliant. And in Two Towers, I did the same as well, and then subsequently, I again sending my reels out everywhere just to see what people thought of it. I got an offer from Weta.
And so what was the first okay, so first I just want to hear, because you talked, so you just kind of talked briefly about, you know, those the being young and new, and then and the fear of being wrong, but at the same time you wanted to learn it yourself. Like, that must have helped you subsequently so much that having the patience to, I feel like if you've been stuck for 2 weeks because of a tick box, you can deal with a slow render or a heavy rig or departments or whatever later in your career.
I think you're right. And I think I learned so much just from, you know, a bit of tough love as well. But also I was pretty determined, but I didn't want to run before I could walk, because I was still, you know, as any artist, you're still pretty nervous about what you do.
Yeah.
But then if you start doing it for yourself, then you're okay and you can live within those bounds. So I started to try and do it for myself and go, look, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. But I've got to work it out. So you know, I was conscious of not wanting any hero stuff. I just wanted to know if I could do it and if I could see the difference between good and bad. And it was great. And those 4 years were very formative in learning how I could do that. And it was fast as well. And I could get there quickly. But it was the frustration was always that with old silicon graphics machines. In fact, I tried to always cheat the system. I found an NT box and I ran Softimage on it. I think it was on Softimage we're working, I can't remember, on Maya. And it ran about 8 times the speed. So I used to just nip off and steal that one and just try and animate on that a little bit and do a play blast from that.
Oh.
But it was kind of, you know, I was always quite, you know, chatty and try and, you know, be social. But as far as anim, you know, I just wanted to know if it was good enough, if it was working.
Yeah.
I just need to know for myself. And I think that came from my background of just like, do I understand this? Can't make sure people telling me what to do. I've got to make sure I know know the logical steps. Yeah. And then when I knew that, I would appreciate everything I was doing. I was like, holy shit, okay, I've got a leg walking over there. I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm going to literally go to the toenail and work out the bend of the toenail and then hair ruffling. You wouldn't see it. It's pixels, mega half pixels. I knew now, and I knew it kind of started to click about weight distribution and how these things roll and the compression of fat, and it was great. It was fascinating, but only from those processes. But I kind of, you know, always had a little bit of confidence, but art and everything, you never really do. It kind of masks it a bit. But what gave me confidence was just going internal and focusing on my own kind of knowledge of it. So the validation I wanted was mine. More than maybe others, but I would show it to people I respect. If some people said they liked it sometimes, I'd be like, nah, nah, you're wrong, you don't like it, no. And then I would be very personal, like I knew what it was right. It's like, no, someone said, this is great. I'm like, no, it's not great. No, I'm sorry, it's not. But maybe that's everyone does that. But that worked for me, and it kind of, I guess, cut through the fears a little bit, because I was knowing if I was right or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've had this feeling a lot lately that I've been finding that if you pursue something out of curiosity, like genuine curiosity, rather than wanting to gain something, it seems to be like a little bit easier to kind of just be honest and open about where your shortcomings are, because, well, you're just trying to do this thing. It's like an honest pursuit instead of trying to get to a certain title or paycheck or whatever.
100%.
Yeah.
No, and I think that gave me confidence, and that's the only way you could do it. And maybe that's from this history and this research thing. It was not like being the best. It was just being good enough that I was happy, you know. And I don't think we're ever really happy with lots of our shots. Sometimes you are, then you watch it, you're like, oh, I don't know about that.
yeah.
You watch it, guys, like, yeah, it wasn't my best work. I didn't have enough time. And we really spent like every night for 6 months getting it right. It like that drove me, and you know, I wanted to go through those kind of steps. I couldn't go any further until I got there. So it's funny, like going back, when I threw my reel out everywhere, I got a message back from ILM, and it was when I first started at Framestore, and they wanted to interview me, and it's such a bad way of starting a new job straight out of school. So they wanted to interview me in ILM, and I'm like, what? They're in London, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I just wanted some feedback, and I kind of then made them look foolish trying to interview, and I was like, oh my god, I'm messing this up. I'll come and see you, and it was this hotel. Now, as I walked into the hotel, who walked out was my old friend who became my mentor at Framestore. I just met, who was really grumpy. I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna hate me even more. And I'm like, it's just because I'm art. And he went, okay. I get in the lift, and then the interviewer comes in. He's kind of stern guy called Liam Scanlon. He's like, you've got no storyboards with you? You've got no portfolio? No, what's going on? I'm like, I think there's a little bit of a mistake. Not realizing this amazing opportunity in front of me. I think it's a bit of a mistake here. I don't think you really mean to interview me. So I went and sat, and then showed my reel and talked over it and said, I just wanted feedback. And he said, look, it's really good. And I'm like, I might have screwed this up, but I just don't think I'm ready to do that. I'm so sorry. Because I just didn't think I was ready. I was not ready to jump to anywhere. Yeah. And I felt embarrassed, and I kind of over-explained it and made them embarrassed. It's horrible. Then I got to work and saw this guy again. I'm like, oh no. That kind of like was a big point. And when I went forward, it was always about trying to work it out myself. Otherwise I couldn't get the book.
So how was the culture shock when going to Weta, when you already had that, you're already such a big fan of their work, and
it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing, and I never hide my joy for it, because I never thought I'd be doing this, and I never thought I'd get to it, and I get to travel. And Lord of the Rings, I'm like, okay. I said to myself many times when I was there, this is the top of the mountain now, and I'm like, just enjoy that, and then, you know, whatever comes after that will come. And I loved it. And they didn't have enough room in the offices on Return of the King. So we had to have a spare studio in Stone Street. It's actually attached to the actual film lot. So every day I had to drive in, and there was a film lot, and I'm like, oh my god, there's like Rohirrim riders everywhere, and like big battle things. I'm like, I'm animating away, and everyone's like, you know, very serious animating and that. And I'm like, no, I'm like, got a t-shirt on. I'm playing the Lord of the Rings soundtrack as I'm animating on Lord of the Rings, watching Lord of the Rings. I don't care. I'm like, this is the best thing in my life. So at lunchtime, I'm like playing foot with orcs. I'm like, what the hell's happening? So I'm just, you know, it's that classic thing. You go there and you're right at the bottom. But it was amazing. I love that fact. I was like, shit. I got all this new stuff to learn now. And I'm like, this is a new bar I've never even thought about. And I know I'm so internally dialoguing whether I'm doing things right, and I'm seeing other avenues, and it's got me more excited. And but I just had to be like, you know, enjoy this. This is amazing, and it's going to change everything. But if it doesn't, this is just amazing. So kind of like, it went from there. Everyone was lovely, and I worked on this big battle sequence called Pelennor Fields. So I brought in the last 6 months with some good friends of mine. Alex Burt was one of them, who's head of animation at Weta now, which is strange enough. And we were working on all these horse deaths. So basically we had all these Mumakil giant elephants smashing things, and horses flying everywhere, and each one everywhere. And so that's all we had to do. just sit and keyframe spinning horses and people flying. It was great. And I'm just like, horse into a horse, and you're showing in dailies, and they're like, great. So you're just like filling up these crowd battles because they couldn't simulate them, I guess.
Yeah.
We did a lot of those, and then kind of started to do another sequence. There was a huge battle sequence inside Gondor where all these wargs, four-legged creatures, ran in and get people out of their homes, and this big sequence, and it's all cut by PJ. But we started doing animations on that. So I did this animation of this guy running on a warg and hitting a person and then circling around and coming back to finish him up. And it took me ages, and again, I was all meticulous and stuff like that. And that was my breakthrough moment, because I showed it to Randy Cook, who's the animation director at the time.
Yeah.
And he watched it, and he watched it in silence, and he kept watching it, and he goes, "I could watch this all day, Robyn." I'm like, "Oh my God, okay." Let's go home now. And he said, "Yeah, we got to get you something good." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So he said, "Do you want to troll shots, or do you want some Gollum shots?"
Oh.
I'll have Gollum, please. What a selection! So, like,
that's amazing.
I was just like, what? I mean, and I could get animated Gollum's finger if I cared. I didn't care,
Yeah.
And so I got a couple Gollum shots, and I was just like in awe, and then went to the premiere, and it was just great. And I didn't know what was going on in my life. I was the other side of the world, just living this life, and it was just amazing. And then it kind of went from there. The people there were so kind, but they were so talented but humble. They always knew of the names who were being talked about, and you saw their work because everyone had this big system. You could just see their play blasts.
Yeah.
You would. And I spent most of my time nerding through, looking at Two Towers and Fellowship play blasts of the Balrog and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was a dream. It's an absolute dream. So I was learning and animating, but I was never looking any further than the experience I was having, because it was just knock my socks off,
Yeah. It's amazing those years at Weta. I've been lucky to have both Randy Link, Jason Snyman, and Aaron Gilman, and Alvise Avati was on as well, and they all talk about Weta as like, like you.
Those guys were all, because like I watch on your channel, and it's like I'm going to the pub. I haven't seen them for ages. So those guys were all there when I was there. So we were all in this little kind of magical hotspot zone. I mean, I don't know what else to call it, really. Just because it was just so special, and people were great, and everyone was working it out. I remember when Alvise arrived, and I met him at a bar with his wife and Kiara, and she spoke English and he didn't. He was just usual, teach each other swear words, the usual stuff, trying to make him laugh. I think he just laughed because he didn't understand what I was saying. But a lot of people do that. I remember him arriving, and that was amazing. He was sitting next door doing Kong stuff, and it was just like incredible. But it was like Snyman as well, and Randy as well. It was just a great period. And Gilman came in later, just as I was leaving, and we became friends there. Then obviously we met him back at DNeg, and it was just a vibe of ease. And if there was anyone that stood out as a bit too much of this, that, and the other, it was kind of shown up pretty quickly, because everyone was like, "Oh, man, don't do that. That's just you don't need to do that," sort of thing. And you did have a few types, that popped in now and again, who did do that, and it just felt a bit weird, But it was it was a real nice bunch. Oh, amazing.
Well, that's always been been one of my favorite things about this industry and about this branch of the industry. That's that when we met in London on Jakarta DNeg, all these that in my book rock stars at the time, and still are, but at the time you're so in awe, and everyone is so good at what they do, but they they're so nonchalant about it, not because they're arrogant, but because it's not a big deal anymore. They're all just doing, and they're all just geeking out together, and it's
Yeah.
and if you can maintain that culture, that's the dream.
It's the most important thing. It's humility and that honesty, and it just makes it so much easier, and everyone enjoys it. And there's no, as soon as someone turns around and go, yeah, well, I'm just amazing, you go, oh, yeah. You're serious? Oh,
yeah.
No, don't.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't become that. And it's less competitive. You just see other people's work and you're like, bastard, that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Everyone wants a good shot now and again, but you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
And for different people love different shots as well. And they're like, oh, I love that bit. I just don't know how you've done that timing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just crazy.
No,
but yeah, they made it, you know. And I think Alvise, like, if we had a meeting of just the people you've had on Frame Throw, that'd just be the best night, just sitting around.
We'll make it happen. Yeah. We'll rent out a pub somewhere, and then we'll just stuff it. That'd be amazing. Yeah. And like you were just describing this it's almost like there's like a point on the curve where it takes off, and I had mine at DNeg on one of the Fast and Furious movies, and then they didn't have mocap enough, so we were just animating these people fighting on top of cars, and something I think it kind of something clicked for me, and then at the same time I got the chance at the right time, so it just kind of like, and then after that Godzilla, and then Heart of the Sea, and then the things rolled. And Alvise's moment was with mosquitoes on Kong, and he spent all this time animating these mosquitoes, and then he got it right, and then suddenly he was just animating King Kong shots, like so many, and they look amazing.
He was amazing. I remember that.
Yeah, and you were just describing that you had a similar moment with.
I think I had a few, really. I mean, definitely the brainstorm moment was drilling into these creatures and getting this kind of lovely approval from a very tough animator to please, and but understanding it and going like, I chose those actions and I can see that timing. Yeah, and him seeing it too. That was. And then Lord of the Rings, chewing through and doing this kind of quadruped. But yeah, you know, there was nothing dangled in front of me of like, if you do this, you're going to do this. No. And I had no ambitions to do anything other than get this looking really cool. I didn't know the sequence was cut. But it was just that kind of fortunate graft that went through. And I think that's what it was about for a lot of people. I think just getting that kind of break. But once you kind of clicks in your head, once it clicks with other people around it, but once it clicks with you, you're like, oh, wow, okay. Let's see what else is out there to test me. So when I had all these years at Weta, I went for a massive growth and a huge change in my skill set. I had a year out in Star Wars as well. And I started to learn so much about anim and get so confident about what was going on. I was looking at more and more difficult and more challenges. You know, I'll give me 4 legs. No, Avatar 8 legs. Okay, 8 legs going downstairs, falling whilst taking its clothes on and off. You know, like the most complicated, hard thing you could imagine. I'm like, let me work it out, because I had so much confidence in my weight and physics. So I was just wanted these challenges, these puzzles. And then it became even different. You know, I changed again. I started to get those moments I loved. But then I saw an animator on Kong. There was a shot of I think it was tracking behind a couple of dinosaurs with a raptor, and an animator, I remember overhearing, just didn't like it. It's like, oh, this is a B shot or a C shot. I don't like it or whatever. I want the money shots, etc. And someone else picked it up, and I saw that someone else take that shot from a nothing shot and make it a really, really cool shot. And I'm like, okay, there we go. That's a bit of genius animation there. Yeah. And I started to analyze more and more animation, and I started again going back to Ghibli and Akira, which I love. And you see frames, and like every shot is a shot, you know. And I was like, every shot can be a shot. And I started to then go, oh, I'll take anything. I don't need the hero shots. I want to be able to make a shot out of any shot. Give me the hardest shots. I want to make a shot out of it. And I love that challenge. And my animation skill changed into storytelling, but with physics as well. Yeah. I was like, okay, I want to So I'm always like more puzzles and more challenges. So it wasn't necessarily that hero moment. It was just the complicated use of assets and timing and space. And I was fascinated by that. So it kind of evolved again, and I kind of opened up more doors, you know. Animation is kind of crazy. You feel like you've always hit a bar, and then you just unlock a door and it goes, I'm like, oh, okay. And you get to that point, I go, this is great. I don't know if I'm a bit bored. Oh my God, there's another world. And then, let alone, you know, getting into seniors and leads and stuff. It's just, it's a ridiculous career.
Yeah, it is. And I was just going to ask about that, because it seems like you were talking about not taking the next step until you're ready, and then unlocking like a new challenge. Was that the same feel you had with when you took on leadership at Weta?
100%, 100%. I felt at one point, you know, I was so happy with the animation I'd done. You know, I hadn't had a long career. You know, I think I was 10 years at that point or something. I was like, you know, I was doing more complicated things, and I was trying to look for shots which weren't shots. And I was like, you know, look at what I've achieved and all these things I was doing. And I'm like, this is, again, I was still living on the wave from Lord of the Rings. I'm like, if this ends tomorrow, I'll be happy. So let's let someone else have, you know, some of those shots. I don't need all those hero shots anymore. And so what else can I challenge myself with, and what could I offer? And I knew I really enjoyed working with people. You know, I don't know if I was the best teacher, but I like working with people and talking animation and breaking it down a bit. And I felt that, you know, again, through my own drilling of knowledge, I knew every stone that was unturned, so I could help people out in certain sticky areas, especially the hard shots. So I was like, okay, well, I think I want to try being a lead, and I tried that for Avatar. And so that was a big step, and that was a good 2.5 years of doing that. So it's about, I think it was 5 leads on that show. And yeah, it was amazing. I was dealing with quite a few shots, a few hundreds of shots to go through and work out sequence beats and animate at the same time, because where do you do everything? But that was it didn't come like, I don't know, I wasn't kind of striving for it. It was just like, okay, well, I can animate more shots, but I think I can do something else. I think I can find something more. Like I've got some amazing hero shots. Do I need more hero shots? I don't think so. I know. I don't know. It felt like a natural way to change. And I felt like, you know, okay, I'm ready to kind of see what this next bit's about. Not like I knew everything about animation or even had all the best hero shots. I just felt I had enough that I'd done to move forward, really.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's it was we didn't work together for or directly together for a few years after there was I think the first show that I worked for you on was Rush, I think. And but you had this I can't remember which show I was on before that, but there was definitely an easing into it. You had this thing of creating a culture on a team that you really emphasized. And like hearing you talk about Weta, it all makes sense. Like you, since you welcomed me onto the team on Rush, and then all the time I've known you since, it's always been, Ben, just put something up on the wall, just make you at home, just like do something. There's nothing here, just and it was always and always that encouragement of just be at home, and you also managed to change DNeg at least the team structure in a way so that all animators were together in a sense where they felt physically as a team. And yeah, like everyone, like I was sitting next to Jack Preston, and he had his whole setup with the carpet and the slippers, and yeah, and yeah, it makes sense that was like it looked like how you approached the leading and the supervising at this point was very much like it was like a new. It seemed like at that point you were at a point where this was the new challenge. It wasn't. It was the cool shots that was not in the past entirely, but it was more like a structural how to figure out animation and management in a large show.
Yeah, and the culture was important, but I don't know. I wanted to. I really loved animating so much. I just wanted to know so much things about it, and that leadership part was the lead. It wasn't being a leader. It was just being that lead of like, okay, how do I help more? You know, what else can I do to help? Not that I was not challenged enough being a senior animator, but it was just fascinating to me. I'm like, hang on, I think I can do more. I was always like, I think I can use my time better, maybe this way. And I can do senior animation work, but I think I can offer more. And because I had that experience, I'm like, maybe I can. And they gave me a chance on Avatar, and it worked out really well. And similarly, when I came to DNeg, leading on John Carter as well, I wasn't a lead when I started, and I got moved to a lead. And again, it was never a lot of animators I speak to, and some people really want to accelerate and be a lead in a soup. I'm like, why the hell would you want to do that? Because like you're wasting your best time learning, you know. Like this animation is so cool when you're leading in soup, and you won't be animating. But you've got to learn this stuff. It's so interesting, and a lot of people don't want to do leads, and I don't blame them. But for me, I was definitely felt like I could give more somehow. And I couldn't do any more shots because I was just doing a lot as much as I could anyway, and I was trying to do difficult ones, and people the ones didn't want to pick up. It's like, give me 40 of the shit shots. I'll do them all. I don't care, and I'll try and craft a shot in each shot. I was always kind of proud of that. I reckon you could pause the frame on any play blast, and it'd be really cool. I really wanted to make every frame, you know. This went way back to my artistic days of painting. I'm like, you know, imagine if you could have a film which you felt as encapsulating as a Rembrandt, you know, which could give you that. So I was always striving for the impossible. But I was like, okay, I think I can give more. But it was never a quest of being. I never wanted to be in charge. I just wanted to understand. And same with being everything else. I was just like, okay, I think I can offer more here. But yeah, the cultural thing all came from Weather. It all came from this kind of community, this one kind of area we had in Wexford. Everyone had a little office. There's 2 people per office, and everyone put stuff up, and you spend all your time there. And it was obvious to them, and I think that came from maybe working in the old industry in California, and those animators come there where they did have lovely offices. And when you go back to London, it was very sterile, and it was almost, you know, people are almost embarrassed to say they love work. So I don't love work. I just sit in a blank office and go to the pub. It's just the money, man. I'm like, oh well, I don't know if that's true. You know, I know animators and they really do love what they're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. You know, so I'm like, don't worry about it. So my big thing was, you know, respect the animators who want to animate and love their job, and just give them everything else but. Because the fact is, that's what they did at Weather. They respected you, loved your work, so they didn't want to talk about it. They were like, you're going to do your work, but I will do everything else around the work to make it feel so cool that all you got to think about is work. And you just feel comfortable. And that kind of worked in Weather, and I thought, well, I'm going to keep trying to do that because that felt really good.
That I think we all felt it at DNeg from the I'm just jumping ahead a little bit now, but because like the real impacts that you had at DNeg with along with Aaron Gilman as well, where you really built a team where sometimes I remember we would hear about things that was going on structurally in the rest of the company, but we wouldn't feel it because there was this very comfortable umbrella, and then we knew when we had to push, and we did, but then we were protected, and the culture. And I also think that's probably why so many of the my good friends that I work with when I first got to Vancouver, and that I also know from London, they're still there, because it's not an easy place to just leave.
Well, I mean, hopefully. The thing is, it's like, you know, same thing I say to everyone when I was doing that. You know, I wanted to create that. I wanted to make it feel how I felt and how I got my best work out, which was comfort and not being afraid, and you know, happy to fail and test and try, and not being judged. And then you do, and you know, a happy animator will just want to work forever. That's what I wanted to do at Weta. Like, they had to drag me out of that office, you know, because I did love it, and I wasn't embarrassed to admit it, and I really, really loved it. But Weta supported that idea, and they were like, "Crike, you want to work more? Here's some more overtime food. Here's some OT. Here's some massages. You want to?" And I'm like, they couldn't do enough, and that's what it is, and that was what it was, and it was repaid back. But it was never a trick. It just felt like, okay, that's what they want to do. And I felt, look, if I was an animator, I wanted to be treated that way, and I wanted to have a happy time, and I felt very close to everyone and could see how good everyone was. And I was like, but they can be better. So I just had to take the shackles off. I told the company, DNeg, straight away, I was like, I'm going to do this my way. If you want to sack me, you can at any point. I told them that. I was like, I'm just going to do it. Like, they're like, well, we can't have anybody in this. No, I'm just going to put everyone in the same room. And I'm just going to go around to facilities, and I'd move desks myself if I had to.
Yeah, I remember that.
I knew it was important. And yeah, getting a lot of trouble, and people didn't like a lot of it, and that's fair enough. And I was, pretty bullish about it, but I just knew it would create a great spirit. And if people did love to animate, then they would do it better in that kind of environment. It was heartbreaking when I got there, because it was still changing in Vancouver, and it didn't quite have that feeling yet. And it was a tough start to try and keep people going, but just had to go straight in with Honest and tell everyone, all the things and all the secrets which I wasn't supposed to tell, because I told DNeg the same thing. That's how I'll have to work, and it paid off, because people seemed happy, and the work now speaks for itself, and got this amazingly strong department, and are like friends and family now. And I mean, it's just, it's amazing. Again, I'm still living on the wave of Return of the King. So anytime it can end,
yeah. Oh, that's great. Because that was really what seemed to be. It was. Aaron said it really well when I spoke to him. He talked about how it really comes down to, both with the client and with the people on a team, it's all about the relationships. And he even corrected me when I talked about failing forward. He was like, no, we're just adapting. It's all about not being afraid and not of taking a risk, but doing it with being trusted. And
yes.
And Eamon Butler talked a lot about the trust as well, and not needing to be micromanaged, and it seems like these are some of the same traits or qualities that you're going for at DNeg.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I did the same with when Gilman came. I said to him, I won't micromanage, but I want to be a person who can advocate for you, and we work together. And it's like anyone, even when you're leading a soup, and you won't have the same for your neighbors. You're not too sure sometimes. And again, from where I work, with my head down, not listening to any of my own world, I'm not too sure if it's right or wrong anymore. So I want someone to trust, so I can talk to. It's the hardest thing, showing animation which is broken, to someone who you don't trust, or you just can't do it. I can't do it. Because if someone says, well, you know what, that's wrong and that's wrong, I'm like, I know these are wrong. I know those are wrong. Just give me something else. So it's possibly hard. So that non-micromanaging and kind of things. I learned a lot from Eamon. Eamon was a great kind of mentor, looked up to, help me develop as well at DNeg first off. And Joe Letteri as well, back at Weta. He was a guy who was so calm, and I felt the closest he got to amazing people and amazing films, the calmer they were. And the further away you got, I heard in commercials, the more of an asshole you are. And I just saw this opposite. And like Andy Jones, who I respect and admire, and director for obviously Avatar and Jungle Book, and really cool cat, but disrespectful. And he could just say, no, that's not quite right. And you're like, yeah, cool, I'll change it. But that could come out of someone else's mouth and just cut you to pieces. And it's just not necessary. And so you create that atmosphere, and everyone can work and try and test, but everyone knows where they're going. And it seems to have worked. And Aaron was, we worked so well together in that time when we did, and we just fed off each other in that same mentality. And he grew into what he is as well. And I've gone on to do other things, and I've just done Dune now, so that's really good, which he encouraged me to do, because I felt guilty doing it. So it's kind of like, I think we're very fortunate. I think Alvise, Eamon, these guys you've met, and girls as well. You know, there's so many new coming through. Yeah. Anna's a big one.
Yeah.
We've had this kind of same teaching. I don't know where it's come from, but it's really important to keep it in the industry, because that's what it's about for me. When I hear people say, "Oh, I don't know if I love animation, I've fallen out with it," it breaks my heart. I'm like, you only get into animation through love. And when you fall out of that, it's like something else must have happened. You must have been at a place which didn't treat you right, or didn't show you respect, because you can outgrow it. But I don't know about falling out of love with this. Like falling out of love with film sometimes. So that's something I never wanted to see. And I wanted to encourage people to love it. They can grow and they can go wherever they want and have their dreams. Yeah. But if they fall out of love with it, then I'm not doing something right.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I'm sure, like as many others, I've had close to burnout moments at granted not at DNeg, so it's not on your doorstep, but it is, you can get close to getting burned, and then you have to figure out, but I also think that then it's just a matter of finding another door, like you talked about earlier, because there's so much to learn. And like I'm trying this out. This is fun, talking about animation. This is great. So it doesn't mean that there's so many avenues within this. And Jason was talking about how animation had been this constant for him for the last 25 years. And it's like, what a beautiful thing, that how much it can give you in so many different ways. And,
absolutely right. Jason's saying exactly right. And you don't think about it. I don't, only having a chat with you, you sit and just go, oh yeah, bloody hell, where am I now? And I'm what? But it is a beautiful harmony. But you know, you want to be happy, and I know happiness and being a good animator are not mutually exclusive. I know that, and being happy and doing great work, I know they're not. I have evidence to prove it. And that's great. So you can have all those things. You can have those things. But you know, I've been burnt out many times, and I think I've been burnt out trying to do too much, maybe. And then I used to work out how to, like saying to you about senior or being a lead, and how to spend your time. And I say that to leads and supervisors, you know, how do you efficiently spend your time? It's like, you can animate everything, but your team doesn't want you to do that. They want to have some other time for you. So it's like, how can you spend your time? And if your work is not giving you something, you still got that energy, you can burn it out doing other things, and something like this or whatever. It doesn't mean you don't love animation. You just need to burn your energy somewhere else, you know?
So I don't know if this is, you don't have to answer if you don't feel like, but so what, do you have a sense of what the next door is for you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I've always had, you know, because that's just the nature of me. So when I've been so fortunate being HOD, not the sort of thing I ever thought ever do. I was a supervisor. Then being global HOD, again, never thought I'd do that. Working with the amazing people in India as well, who I respect massively. And to seeing these people and working with them and all these, I never thought this in a million years. But then I go back to doing Dune. Oh yeah, I'm always thinking 2 or 3 years ahead. Trust me, that's what I have to do. So I always have exciting things up my sleeve, but I can't tell you all of those secrets. No. You know, well, they've got to be surprises.
I figured we'll just have to do a part 2.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, definitely. When I've got with no hair left.
Yeah. Well, I just looked at the clock now. It's been an hour and almost 10 minutes.
Yeah, I tend to talk a lot when I'm excited.
No, this is great, and we could keep going, but I don't want to take up all your night. I know you probably have to get up a few times tonight as well. You have a little one.
Yes, I do. I'm going to cook dinner now and do some painting of the house, and then take the girl to bed and up at 6. So classic dad day.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, Robyn, we could keep going, and I'll probably ask you to do this again. This was...
No worries, man.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, dude. It's just like a pleasure to speak to you. This is awesome. I love catching up. I love listening to everyone else. And yeah, let's do it again, man.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Benny.
Okay, bye.
Take care, bye.